But first, I hope you all have been able to get your children, bring them into the space.
Yeah.
We have a special children's treat for you. Drama, right? So we have Auntie Goose. We're going to bring her up on. Let me bring her up. Let me bring her up.
All the tea. Auntie Goose. So good.
Hello. Uh-oh. It looks like Auntie Goose eating too.
God, look at that.
Oh, my goodness.
Hello, friends. Hello, boys and girls. Oh, Auntie Goose. Thank you for coming to spend some time. I was expecting you. You know, we're celebrating Juneteenth.
Okay.
All right, now.
We're going to give you the floor, Auntie Goose. Enjoy.
And look, in honor of this special occasion, I have baked you some very delicious banana bread and some carrot bread. Can you smell that? I baked it myself. Why don't you just reach on out and grab yourself a piece? So happy that you're here today. Well, I was told that I was invited to come do some storytelling as we are celebrating Juneteenth. And so that I shall. But first, tea. Now I have here some very delicious peppermint tea. And before I pour some for me, I shall pour some for you. So here we go. Nice and hot. I just want to make sure you get a sip right there. There you go. Have a little sip of that tea. It's really hot. Be careful now. Smells so good. And I shall pour just a little bit for me as I tell you a little story I heard about a little boy named Jesse and his cousin. What was his cousin's name? Betty. Are y'all ready to hear the story about Jesse and Betty? Well, Jesse and Betty were two young children. Jesse was 7 and Betty was 5. And they worked very hard. They had a lot of chores. Do you have chores? Well, believe me, the chores they had were very, very difficult to do. They got up at 4:30 in the morning. What time did you get up in the morning? 4:30 in the morning they got up. And Jesse had to chop wood. He had to feed the pigs, feed the horses, and yes, he had to clean and pick all kinds of things. Cotton, string beans, yams, peanuts, picked a lot of things every day. Have you ever picked anything out the ground? Like food? Well, Jesse had to do that all the time. And his little cousin, Betty and Jesse worked every day. Got up 4:30, did their chores. Didn't get to go to bed till late in the evening, 7 o'clock. And another thing about them too, unfortunately, they were not able to go to school. Why? Because they were forced to work every day. And even though their parents wanted them to go to school, they just couldn't do it. On Tuesday, they got up and they worked. On Wednesday, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every day. But one day, oh my goodness, one day, just out the blue, excuse me while I take a little sip of tea. That's just delicious. Well, one day they got up and went to the field to go pick some string beans and some cotton, Jesse and Betty. They went out there and they started picking and picking and picking and picking and doing what they had to do. All of a sudden, as they looked coming across this field, was Uncle John. And Uncle John seemed very excited. He was waving his hands. He was making a lot of noise and he was coming forward. Everybody stop what you're doing. Good news. Good news. Good news. Would you like to hear what the good news was? Oh my goodness, this show is hot in here. Well, the good news was that Uncle John had heard from his cousin Peebo that there was a rumor going around that they no longer had to work. They no longer had to slave. That they were now free. Could it be? It couldn't be. Betty looked at Jesse. Jesse looked at Betty, and they both looked at their uncle. And he said, I'm pretty sure it's true. Because some people on the plantation right there have all just walked off, dropped their shovels, dropped their instruments, dropped their sacks, and walked off. He said, this is our time. Let's go. Betty was shocked. Jesse was shocked. What will we do? Auntie said, well, the first thing we're going to do is drop our bags and hightail it out of here and find us a moment to get together. You know, they had family members that had been sold off of the plantation. So actually, Betty hadn't seen her mama in a long time, and neither had Jesse. So their auntie suggested, we're gonna go look for your mama, and we're gonna go look for your mama too. It's gonna be a family reunion. So Juneteenth was one of the biggest family reunions because everybody went looking for their sisters and their brothers and their aunties and their cousins so they can celebrate together. And that they did. They made a big feast. They put out a blanket. Now, a big feast wasn't a big feast like how you see it now. I mean, a big feast was just some sweet potatoes and some string beans, and they enjoyed that with some water. No Kool-Aid. But they were so excited. Aunties, grandmothers, cousins, they all gathered together and had a big celebration. They ate and they sang. And I want to teach you a song. Will you sing a song with me today? As they gathered together to sing the song. That's just good tea. As they gathered together to sing this song, Grandmama raised her hand. She said, oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. I want you to sing it with me. Oh, freedom, let me hear you. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. While everybody had their hands up in the air, they sang all night. They danced all night. They found out about other family members that they hadn't seen in a while, who was sent off over there and who was sent off way over yonder. And how can we find this person and were they sent to another state? And that they did. For weeks it took for some of them to find some of their family members. For, you know, back then, they didn't have cell phones, and they didn't have Snapchat, and they didn't have email, and they didn't have Periscope. They didn't have any of those things. They didn't even have Facebook. But it was such a jubilant occasion. Jubilant all night long, singing, eating, dancing, hugging, crying. Oh, and look at that. Today we are still celebrating and still walking toward freedom. And we're not going to stop because we're not quite at the finish line yet. But I'll tell you this, whatever breath, yes, I said every breath we take, we get a little bit closer to freedom. Oh, yes. Oh, freedom. Oh, in our grave and go home to our Lord and be free. And that's the story of Jesse and Betty, two little children that worked, didn't go to school, but learned a lot, appreciated a lot, and found a good reason to celebrate freedom. Thank you, boys and girls, for taking the time to hear my story about Juneteenth. Keep on celebrating. Oh, have another piece of banana bread, won't you? And you can check us out on YouTube, where I'll be telling more stories. Watoto Entertainment.
Thank you so much, Auntie Goose. We definitely appreciate you. That was just amazing. I hope you all enjoyed that. It was just a different spin on learning about the history of Juneteenth.